Hello, I'm Nima Rajan. A private funeral will be held today in Houston for the black man whose death sparked a global movement against police brutality and racism. George Floyd will be laid to rest next to his mother, ending days of memorials that spanned Minnesota, North Carolina, and Texas. Mr. Floyd was killed on the U.S. Memorial Day holiday after a white police officer continued to kneel on his neck for more than 8 minutes, even though he said he couldn't breathe. The federal government has announced $8.9 million in foreign aid that will go towards ensuring women have safe access to abortion and reproductive health services during the COVID-19 pandemic. Federal International Development Minister Karina Goad says the health crisis has restricted access to contraceptives, abortion services, and reproductive health care in some countries. $2 million of the funding will go to the United Nations Trust Fund on Violence Against Women to help combat gender-based violence internationally. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says a Liberal bill that would fine or imprison people who made fraudulent claims under the Canada Emergency Response Benefit hurts the very people the program was designed to help. Calling it irresponsible and wrong-headed, Mr. Singh says new criminal penalties will hit poor and racialized people harder. He says the tax system should be used to recover funds that should not have been paid, rather than fining or jailing people during a pandemic. The World Health Organization says it still believes the spread of COVID-19 from people without symptoms is rare. This comes despite warnings from numerous experts worldwide that such transmission is more frequent and likely explains why the pandemic has been so hard to contain. WHO's technical lead on COVID-19 says many countries are reporting cases of spread from people who are asymptomatic or those with no clinical symptoms, but says many of them turn out to have mild disease or unusual symptoms. Vancouver's Racial and Ethnocultural Equity Advisory Committee is calling for the collection of race-based health data. In a statement yesterday, the committee says the data would shed light on the impacts of COVID-19 on racialized communities, which have been particularly hit hard by the virus. It says there's ample evidence that people of different marginalized identities, including race, experience health inequalities, particularly when it comes to the social determinants of health. Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health is urging anti-racism protesters to get tested for COVID-19 after gathering in large numbers for recent rallies. Dr. Dina Hinshaw says people should be tested even if they don't have symptoms. About 10,000 people took to the streets in Edmonton on Friday as part of anti-racism rallies, and there have also been numerous rallies and marches in Calgary. Well, as provinces begin to gradually lift their COVID-19 restrictions, a new poll shows that the vast majority of Canadians are bracing for a second wave of the virus, one just as bad or possibly worse. The survey by Leger and the Association for Canadian Studies found that 76% of respondents expect the country will experience another outbreak, with 32% saying that they expect it to be nastier than the first. The poll also found that Canadians are increasingly wearing masks when they run errands, with 53% saying face coverings should be mandatory in public and confined spaces like shopping malls and public transit. Winnipeg's police chief says organizations and police need to be able to work together in a more stable environment before police services are withdrawn. Otherwise, the community could be put at risk. Danny Smythe's comments follow the creation of a petition calling for the complete abolition and defunding of the Winnipeg Police Services. The petition was circulated after last Friday's Justice for Black Lives rally at the Manitoba Legislature. Mr. Smythe says he was pleased with how the community and the police officers handled the demonstration. Hong Kong's leader says she hopes both sides have learned their lessons from the difficulties of the past year. Today is the first anniversary of the start of the anti-government protests in the semi-autonomous Chinese territory. Chief Executive Carrie Lam says Hong Kong cannot bear the continued chaos, adding that people want to live and work in a stable environment. There have been calls for protests to commemorate the march on June 9, 2019, that marked the beginning of a months-long protest movement demanding greater democracy. U.S. President Donald Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden are reacting to growing calls to defund police departments. Neither are in favor of defunding, with Mr. Biden saying he prefers federal aid to police be conditional, while Mr. Trump plainly rejected the call. Voting in Georgia and West Virginia give both campaigns an opportunity to prove that they can assemble a coalition strong enough to win in November, in the wake of massive protests against police brutality that mobilized the African American community and its supporters. France's floundering aviation industry is set for a cash injection as the COVID-19 pandemic begins to wane. The French government is putting up just shy of $17 billion US in rescue money to save hundreds of thousands of jobs and keep Airbus and Air France globally competitive. The deal would see the companies get the assistance in exchange for investing more in electric, hydrogen, or other lower emission aircraft. Officials say they want to make the French aviation industry the cleanest in the world. Iran appears to have constructed a new mock-up of an aircraft carrier off its southern coast for potential live fire drills. This comes as tensions remain high between the U.S. and the Islamic Republic. The target is seen in satellite photographs that were obtained on Tuesday by the Associated Press. It resembles the carriers that the U.S. Navy routinely sails into the Persian Gulf. The ship's appearance also comes as Iran announced that it will execute a man that authorities accuse of sharing details on the movements of a top Iranian Revolutionary Guard general whom the U.S. killed in January in a drone strike in Baghdad. Well, hotel chains across the U.S. will no longer just be competing price-wise or enticing travelers with perks. Now they will try to outdo each other with cleanliness. Marriott, Hilton, and other big hotel companies are making visible changes in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. From masked clerks to prepackaged breakfasts at their buffets, they're hiring medical and cleaning experts and sharing details of their new regimens. Hotels are hoping to soothe jittery travelers and win back some business from rivals like home-sharing giant Airbnb. Well, that'll do it for today's news update. I'm Nima Rajan. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you next time.